Hey, what's happening, guys? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review, and let's talk a little bit about the changing face of E3. So a lot of you guys may or may not know this. It hasn't actually been as big of a news as you would really think, but over the course of the last week, or even couple of weeks, I guess, it's become confirmed from both Electronic Arts and also now Activision that they will not be attending E3 this year in 2016. So that means they're not going to be having their own press conferences, and it also means that they're not going to be having their own booths on the show floor. It feels like a pretty big deal to make these announcements, I think, from two of the biggest companies and third-party developers and publishers in the industry. Now, I don't quite know why this doesn't seem to be making that big of a splash in the news, but I feel like it's actually a pretty big deal. Hearing from these two companies, I mean, I have to admit that this is something I only found out about today. When Pat the NES Punk and his Completely Unnecessary podcast, which I have become a huge fan of over the last couple of months, they actually brought it up on their podcast, on one of their short little snippet videos they did from their recent podcast, where Activision was the new one to add to the fray and say, hey, we're actually not going to be attending E3. So through that, I've been thinking about what's been going on with E3, what Nintendo's done, what Activision and EA seem to be doing, and if it's really that big of a deal as far as the future of E3. So first, let's look at why they're not going to be coming to E3. Now, obviously, neither company has come right out and say exactly why they're not going to be there, but it seems to be pretty obvious. E3 is really, really expensive. It's something that costs millions of dollars. It costs all sorts of time and energy. You have to hire production crews and crews that can actually set up and tear down things. And you have to take a lot of the people who might be working on your products or your games or other projects that happen year round, and you maybe have to pull some of them apart so that you can start preparing things for E3. I think that's something that a lot of people don't really think about. If you're Electronic Arts and you're going to have a booth at E3 and you're like, okay, well, we're working on a new Mass Effect and a new Dragon Age and a new Madden and maybe Dead Space and, I don't know, whatever other myriad huge kind of titles they have to work on. I mean, there's so many things. You know, you've got these teams working on these games, and then E3 is coming up in the next 5 or 6 months, and you're like, okay, well, we need to prepare a sizzle reel. We need to prepare an E3 specific trailer. We need to prepare an on-stage demo for the presentation. We need to prepare a playable demo to be playable on the show floor. All of those different things means you have to take a lot of the folks working on something like a Mass Effect Andromeda, for example, and you got to take a bunch of those people and pull them off and say, okay, prepare all the E3 stuff. Let's slow down production on Mass Effect Andromeda, or whatever else the case may be. Let's slow production on that, pull some people off of that, and have them work on this other stuff for E3 so that now we have things to show and get people excited for it, which of course is very valuable. But it's also going to, like I said, slow down production of that game, or all of the games, or basically your entire production team. And so, you know, yes, there's the money involved of actually setting up and renting space for E3, but then there's that aspect, the practical aspect of how it probably divides your workforce and changes the way your company is actually working and how much time and energy and manpower you're putting on the different projects you guys might have happening at any one time. That's a pretty big deal. And it seems like Electronic Arts and Activision, they're already huge companies, and I'm wondering if they're maybe feeling like, hey, we're big enough, people are aware enough, the internet provides us the ability to always market and promote our products and let people know what we're working on. We don't really need to be at E3. There's no reason for us to spend that time and money and manpower to have a presence at E3 where it's just going to divide our workforce otherwise, and maybe slow down what it is we're trying to do to just keep ourselves an operating game development company. And in that respect, it kind of makes sense. What I think is probably still going to be happening is I think we're still going to be seeing EA and Activision games at E3. I'm sure that, excuse me, I'm sure that we're probably going to see Call of Duty on stage at one of the press conferences. You know, we're going to see the new Call of Duty. Did they say what it's called? I don't think they've announced the official title, but whatever, Infinity Ward's new Call of Duty game, we're going to see that. There might be some Blizzard stuff shown, you know. I'm sure there's going to be Madden, you know, we're probably going to get a reveal on one of the press conferences or somehow during the week of what Mass Effect is actually going to look like gameplay-wise and whatever else EA is looking at. We'll probably see them in different capacities through other means and other companies' presentations, but they're not going to rent huge floor space to have their own booths, to prepare all these other things specifically for E3. They're just going to let the marketing happen through probably other guys, you know, Sony or Microsoft, maybe Nintendo. Bethesda said they're, excuse me, Bethesda said that they're not going to be doing another press conference this year. I don't know who else will be doing what. I don't really know. But anyway, it just seems like they're probably content letting it happen, more organically through those other guys because it's still promotion and it still helps them out. Oh, Ubisoft, they're probably, as far as we know, still going to be having a press conference and a presence at the floor. But, I kind of understand where they're coming from, and it's interesting. It's kind of like also like Ian on the Completely Unnecessary podcast said on that video. I'm going to link it below for you guys so you can watch it real quick too. Like he said, it's kind of one of those things where even though Nintendo a lot of times is kind of slower to adopt certain technology or new business or gaming related practices, this is one of the things like myself and a lot of other Nintendo fans have been saying the last couple of years. We saw this coming, that Nintendo might have really been the first to jump on board, seen what's actually coming down the road, understood where things were going as far as the digital internet and marketing age and what E3 really is and has represented. And they might have been the ones who've been able to kind of see, you know what, there's a better way. You can kind of bypass a lot of the crap and the BS and the mixed messaging and marketing of E3 and just go right to people. You can avoid it. You can avoid spending all that money at E3, go right to the gamer and the consumer and just let the internet and your own direct advertising get right to your consumer. And that's what they've been doing with just even the digital presentations. What do they call it? The digital events at E3 these last couple of years. That's what Nintendo's been doing. They kind of have spearheaded this. And whereas Nintendo will still have a presence at E3, they're going to have a booth. They're one of the 3 console players. They're always going to have a presence for as long as E3 is relevant, I should say. Whereas they're still going to be doing that stuff, I still think that they've put in place the initial kind of stepping stones to what might be happening with E3 in the future. And so therein lies the other crux of the conversation that really is what I wanted to talk about real quick with you guys, is E3 and E3's future. Are decisions like this and, steps like this by big companies to maybe bow out and step away from E3, is this leading towards something where E3's relevance is waning? Maybe the purpose of E3 no longer carries the same weight that it used to, where we had to get our news just through magazines and just by waiting, for the new Game Informer or GamePro or EGM that month to find out what actually happened at E3, a couple of weeks ago. It's so different nowadays where companies and the internet and all these crazy big websites like IGN and GameSpot, they allow for us to get a lot of this news just by watching stuff online and getting article updates and seeing released trailers and press releases. That's all handled by the companies themselves. And not everyone having to come together for this one trade show and this one convention at E3 in LA every year. It's kind of one of those things where the internet, for better or worse, is maybe making something like E3 irrelevant. And I do have to say that I think it's sad because I think E3 is awesome. I always love E3. All of us do. We get so excited when E3 is coming, all the things that we're hoping to see and hear about and find out about, the surprises we're going to have, more info on games that we're already excited for, what kind of megatons are going to happen. That's always a lot of fun. We always want to look forward to that. And I'm someone who even was lucky enough to attend E3 back in 2004, and it was like the best week of my entire life. Absolutely spectacular. And I will always hold that as a very cherished memory for gaming. And to think that that might be changing or going away or just not as important as it used to be does certainly make me sad, but I also understand why. The organic and real-time nature of the internet has made it so that we don't really have to rely on an annual in-person convention every year to give us our news. Now, what E3 represents will probably still have importance for a very, very long time, even with companies like EA and Activision bowing out. I think that it's still going to be this centralized, very focused week where we all know, hey, we need to get news and reveals and trailers and surprises and updates and all these things. We need to get that. It's also a great way for the faces of these companies to actually show and present themselves to us, the consumer and the gamer in the industry, and understand who they are, get a feel for if we think they're honest, if we think that the things that they're doing for their company is actually smart and intelligent and something that attracts us to their products. I think that's important. We always got to see Reggie. We're always going to have to see, Sean Layden and Andrew House and all those people. Phil Spencer, very public figure. We're always going to need to see him. So for that reason, things like E3 are always going to have to be important. But I just really wonder if companies as big as Activision and EA stepping away really means that companies are going to start wisening up to the fact that hey, this maybe isn't really all that important. I mean, we can do this at any other time. I mean, Gamescom is huge. Tokyo Game Show is huge. Those kind of shows and conventions, which do both happen outside of North America, have really been kind of gaining steam. And there's been a lot of importance put on those shows, the content that's there, the presentation and surprises and press conferences that are happening at those shows. That stuff is really starting to take a lot, like newfound importance almost over E3. So I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, there's not really much more to say other than that. I think that E3 is always the best. I always love it. I'm excited for it this year, and I think it still has a very long life. Maybe next year EA and Activision come back. This could just be a one-off. We don't really know yet. But I have a feeling it isn't. I have a feeling it's something that's really motivated by how much money and time and manpower it costs to do, just like I said at the beginning of the video. And I don't know, I guess the next couple of years are going to be very revealing as far as how many companies follow in EA and Activision's footsteps, or if EA and Activision come back in the next couple of years. E3 definitely still has like another 5 to 10 years of life in it, but when you look even farther down the road, maybe because of the internet and the way we get news and the growing importance of Gamescom and TGS, E3 won't really exist the way it does now, and maybe it even goes away entirely. Who really knows? Either way, it does seem like Nintendo was one of the forebearers of kind of changing the way they present themselves at E3 and realizing that some of it's great, but some of it creates mixed messaging and doesn't really benefit you and just costs you money for your company. So, kudos for Nintendo if in fact that all turns out to be true. EA and Activision are two companies that both make me frustratingly angry, but also have a lot of games that I really love, so I want to see them do very well at the same time. So I guess we're just going to see how it all plays out. Regardless, this year's E3 hopefully will still be very great, even without the presence of those two companies and whatever press conferences and things that they were going to do. So share what you guys think about this. Do you think this is a big deal? Do you think that it is maybe a growing sign of E3's relevance going away like I do? Or do you think it's not really that big of a deal? It doesn't really mean anything more than that they just don't want to be there this year and everything will continue as normal over the next couple of years for E3. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. And that's it, quick update. Tomorrow I'm going to hopefully try to get posted a very exciting Nintendo related video. I've done a couple of Nintendo videos lately, but I have a really big one that I think is going to be very cool and very well liked that I want to talk about tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. Share your thoughts about E3, Electronic Arts, and Activision, and all this crazy stuff below. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you guys next time on another video.